to see you, Anthony.
It is great to be seen by the one, the only, the Glenn.
Yeah, baby.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn.
You're watching the #1 show in hospitality.
Hey, welcome to No Vacancy Live. Of course, that's Anthony Melchiori, and I'm still Glenn Hausman. It is great to see each and every one of you choosing to spend some time with us today. Anthony, where are you today, my friend?
I am at Patriot Place, right in the parking lot of Patriot Stadium, working with Colin Hotels. And it's one of my, well, it's definitely one of my favorite hotels. And it definitely this area, it's amazing. And you can literally, if you're going to a Patriot game, you can literally walk across the parking lot and in 100 yards be in the stadium. It's absolutely or a concert. It's one of the greatest locations, and Colin's one of the best management companies in the country, and it's always a pleasure to work with them. But you know what,
you're working with them. Let me just say something real quick about the good folks over there. I had the chance to meet some of the executives once, but I've stayed at a number of their hotels, and I was in Portsmouth over the summer for our friend Bruce Ford's big 50th birthday bash. Coincidentally stayed at a Colwyn hotel. They apparently have a lot of them in Portsmouth. And the staff there, the nicest staff I had seen in such a long time. They were engaged. They really came off as caring about you, and they took the trouble to really learn about you and interact with you every single time you came through the lobby. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, you know, it's every hotel. I was in the area yesterday driving from Portsmouth coming to this hotel. And I went to a different hotel by mistake. Same brand, but it's only a couple miles away. And I was like, I don't remember being here. As soon as I drove on property, I knew it wasn't a Colwyn hotel. I just knew it. It just didn't feel like it. And when you walk into one of their hotels, it just feels fresh and clean. Everybody's engaged. And one of the things we're working on, there's two programs I'm working on. But today, we're working on line level employees that want to be supervisors. And what are the type of things you need to learn to be a supervisor? And obviously, the number one thing is communication. We did a drill yesterday or an exercise that Randy, who's amazing, who's the corporate trainer, did with them. And they really saw how important it is. Like if you say to somebody, there was one thing, the lesson was, if you say to somebody, can you please clean out the cooler or the ice machine? Okay, well, then all of a sudden you get the ice machine and it's not clean the way you want it to, because you didn't tell them, when you clean out the ice machine, can you please do this. So it's just really great to work with help them get ready for those positions they'll be in, to be able to be a supervisor, because being nice and being on time, as I've said many times here, is not going to get you to where you need to go. You need to be a great communicator.
Yeah, you certainly do. But one of the other important things, Anthony, about having a great hotel is not just an amazing staff that is interested in serving their guests while simultaneously thinking about the future of their career, but it's having a great environment in which to spend all of your time. We've done a bunch of feature shows on our friends over at Moxy and some of the owners and designers of those properties. But I thought it would be fun today to go halfway across the world for a property, and I'm talking about the Moxy in Sydney, the first one that opened. And we've got their designers today from the MAED Collective. We have Corinne, Huard, and Cherie, Stinson. Ladies, thank you for joining us. Hi. MAED Collective, great design firm. They're just getting into the hospitality business, but they have a lot of experience in this realm working for others. But Anthony, what I love about these ladies is they're amazing entrepreneurs as well as terrific designers. Welcome.
Yeah, and as you just said, they're where their president is today.
What is that?
He's in America. He's at the White House.
The Australian president or the Canadian president?
No,
they're Canadian. They're Canadian. The property's in Australia, so we got a little confused.
Right. Okay, so the Canadian president is in Canada, Prime Minister, but the Australian president is here at the White House.
I got it. Okay.
Well, we weren't sure what you were talking about that.
But you know what? People compare Canadians and Australians all the time, saying we're so similar. So I thought that's where we were going with this one.
I think Canadians are nicer and Australians drink more.
Yes.
I don't know. Listen, I think Canadians are everything Americans want to be.
Well, thank you. I don't know about
I
this.
I agree. I love it. So yeah, you guys just how did you get into doing a Moxy hotel? Because that's pretty significant. So obviously you have to have the pedigree and the experience behind it. Maybe instead of just saying directly, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you built up getting the experience and stuff to even be considered for such an
Yes.
opportunity.
I mean, that's a really good question because, when we first got into this world on our own, we used to come from bigger studios. We had Moxie experience from our previous studio. So you would think it probably would come from through Marriott or those people. But actually, it was a previous client that we had that we worked with while they were in Dubai that had moved back to Australia, and we just stayed in touch. And then he was telling me that he was, overseeing this division for this development company in Sydney, and that he had a Moxy. And so he knew that we had some experiences with Moxy from our old days, the Times Square in Chelsea. And so he just asked if we'd be interested. And we said, of course. And this was like pre-pandemic. And so, we're trying to figure out the logistics and everything, and budgets were, humble as they always are. And at first they were talking about maybe we just engaging us to do concept work and then, passing it on to a local consultant to finish it. We quickly discovered that was not going to be sort of a successful model. And so we worked intensely with their people on the ground, and we followed the project through to completion. And in between that, there was this little thing called COVID that happened to everyone. And so, we were able to go to this one site visit. And after that, everybody just shut down. And Canada and Australia especially really shut down hard.
Australia shut down. And
Yes.
I know that I recently had on Susie Greinall on a panel that I did at the lodging conference back in September. She, of course, is the president and CEO of the Canadian Hotel Association.
Yeah.
And she was saying, y'all were closed for like 18 months or something.
Yes.
Like that,
Yes.
longer than the rest of us.
Yes.
were.
So when you guys were screaming open up and finally opening up, we were just shutting down all over again, like 2-3 more times after that. So, you have COVID babies, you have COVID animals, and we had a COVID hotel. So we were doing everything from a distance. And it was like coordination on steroids, calls were super intense and going through everything. And you can imagine, shipping finishes between Australia and Canada during all of this was quite the feat.
Yeah.
But, everybody was really determined, and we were passionate about getting this done. And we really wanted this to be like a really standout Moxy. One of the things about this particular property that was interesting is that it's geographically located in sort of the Asian market for the brand. And so different standards. And so what we were used to in North America might not necessarily apply,
Right.
but there's kind of a hybrid model there just because of Australia.
Yeah, we'll totally get into that. But
Okay, sorry.
Anthony, I see that you were looking to say something over there.
No, I was just wondering if we have any pictures of the design.
Oh, we do. Yeah, I did
And
my
also-
job for once. Of course, granted, it was an hour before we went on
I
air.
know, not necessarily Glenn's fault because he got it from me an hour before the show.
No, I just wanted to say during COVID, you say you have COVID children, COVID dogs. I have a COVID Glenn. I got to know Glenn during COVID, so he's my COVID Glenn.
That's too funny. All right, so great property. Boom! Here's our first image. Now we're taking a look at the lobby, and Cherie and Corinne, when you start to talk a little bit about this, try to use as many word pictures as you possibly can for our podcast audio only audience.
Great.
All
Okay.
right.
So Cherie, I'll let you talk through sort of the materials and like the inspiration behind the design of the hotel. We're starting here with a rendering actually, and then we're getting into pictures. But one of the reasons why we always combine them these days is just like we were just so shocked about how similar, like how it came out almost identical to the vision. And considering all the obstacles and things that we had to go through to get this done, we're pretty proud of that. So we do that just to make sure to show people, maybe brag a little bit. But
Yeah, that's great. I love it, Cherie.
Well, I think, the inspiration for this was it's in a little, obviously it's by the airport, but there's an industrial sort of aspect to this. So we were looking at like shipping containers and like kind of cool industrial parts. And there's a little tiny neighborhood that's nearby. It's called Mascot. And it's like a little tiny little strip, you just drive by in 3 seconds, but there's a sort of like Art Deco kind of aspect to it. So you'll see a lot in the details, like in the columns and some of the metal work that we used in the design, where it's quite an industrial vision. Even the elevators are shipping containers, which we took a lot of inspiration from because there's quite a bit of a shipping container aspect there. and even some of the colors that we use throughout the project. So in this view, we're looking at the check-in bar, which with this beautiful big bar combo, which is reception. And obviously we used a stone that is resembles sort of the earth of Australian earth. It's really big and open. It's lots of like communal seating, super kind of fun space. Obviously, this very large tree that sort of attracts you, that sort of grounds the cafe area.
And to just interject, Cherie, like, so this was a really industrial building, and the ceilings are really quite high. So we had to come up with, some techniques to sort of make the spaces more intimate.
Hold on. Let me. That's awesome. I love adaptive reuse buildings.
Yes.
Right? They really present both a unique set of challenges and opportunities when
Absolutely.
designing something. So you're saying one of the challenges of this space is that the ceilings were super high. Now, for me, I kind of like that because I think it opens it up a little bit, lets the space kind of breathe. I'd rather have a little bit high ceiling than too low of a ceiling.
Right.
I'm looking at this picture now, and I love what you did to make it a little bit more personal with putting some plant life and stuff up in the ceiling, kind of hanging down.
Right.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the planting was a huge part of the sort of styling and sort of appearance of it. And also, you'll kind of see in this rendering to the right, or this photograph, there's a whole mezzanine area at the top, which are these like kind of really fun meeting rooms. Each of them kind of have a theme. So having that visual or that connection from that upper floor to the sort of activated lobby was like a super important thing. And then obviously masking some of those columns and sort of softening them with the greenery was important to us too.
Yeah.
And there's also a use of beams. So these are kind of faux beams just to lower the ceiling a little bit, make it more intimate, not so cacophonous and overwhelming as you walk in. And then it leads your eye to the very end where there's even more spaces to discover.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like a hotel. It feels like just a really cool space.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like a total hangout space. Like even in this like area of Mascot, like there's a cute little neighborhood there. And, the whole idea of our entrance, even where we put our entrance, was really important. It's kind of on this little cross street. So all of the neighborhood could kind of come over here and hang out. So we wanted to really activate that cafe moment in the front of the property. So, when you're coming up to the front door, it's like all open cafe. People are hanging out on the steps. People are a part of like the sort of action of the hotel as well as the neighborhood.
Yeah. And people that aren't that familiar with the Moxy brand, that area of the hotel is a big part of their brand. So to have that be not only comfortable but very accessible is basically a linchpin to the brand.
No, that's a great point, Anthony, because, part of this brand is everything is so flexible because it has to be able to be used in so many different capacities. It doesn't matter which property it is, but in this case, there's a lot of businesses around there. So there's a lot of like corporate functions and things like that. But there's also an element of social life. And that's what Moxy kind of brings together. But that's also the challenge. I think most design is like that these days. But the challenge for this was to design something that wasn't so set, flexible in use for anybody to be able to use it either to be a social thing or a corporate function, or just doing some work in the lounge while waiting for a friend or whatever before you go to a meeting.
Right.
If I can ask Glenn a little inside baseball. So during COVID, you have all you mocked up all these beautiful renderings. You have all these beautiful ideas of furniture and fabrics and stone. How many percentage-wise products did you have to basically still get the same quality, but maybe change it out a little bit simply because of shipping cost,
supply chain issues?
Yeah, more. Was it a much bigger percentage than typical?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's the recurring theme from COVID, right? Is just where you're going to get it built and how you're going to get it shipped, and then there's political issues that happen and all kinds of stuff, and so trying to figure out where's the best place to source from, and Australia is not necessarily the easiest place to ship things to in the most efficient way, especially during COVID, especially when ships are getting stuck in canals and everything is happening all at once, right? So there was a lot of back and forth, really intense coordination with the clients who they would sometimes fly if they could at the time. And some of the stones we actually got from Europe, which is totally weird, but it was just one of those things that just made sense at the time.
I mean,
the reason go ahead.
A lot of the fabrics, a lot of the styling and everything came locally because at that point, whatever we specified from where we were obviously wasn't available to be shipped there. So a lot of it, I would say 80% of it was resourced locally. So.
Yeah, and the reason I asked the question, because designing a hotel or really anything is like just being a human being. You got to change, you got to understand, you got to be flexible, but you still have to have your vision. You still have to live up to your brand of what you want to do. But a lot of people in the hotel business don't really see what your part of the business, because the time they come into the hotel and they're operating, all they're doing is either saying, wow, how beautiful it is, or they're criticizing, why is this there? Why is the couch there? And so one of the things, and Glenn knows this, that I love design and I love designers, because they can make my job so much easier or so much harder. And if you don't understand what they go through to develop that beauty, it's a shame, because it's an incredible process. And it's a very difficult project, especially during COVID. I was working on a project out in California, and I mean, everything just went up 30%, just immediately.
Absolutely. And I don't know if it was like the Canadian Australian sensibilities, but everybody was really motivated to make this work. So people were patient. We were back and forth, so many red lines, hours and hours of conference calls, and trying to FaceTime sometime. It was just like absurd sometimes with the kinds of decisions we were trying to make virtually with the client. And we worked with a local styling company called Marquez, and they were just amazing. They were just like, everything that they sourced was just so on point based on the presentation that we had given them. And, we did like obviously a presentation on steroids just to make sure that it was very clear where things and how things were supposed to be. But that coordination effort really worked out, because we were just shocked at just how successfully this came out.
I'm not shocked, because you're talented people, but it is shocking the challenges that you have to overcome to create something that people want to inhibit when you're not even on the same continent. Yeah. How do you kind of pull that together in the sense of understanding how that space is going to be utilized and be able to create a design that accents that utilization, as opposed to sets up barriers for people and makes people too conscious of the space that they're in?
Cherie, do you want to hit this one? Or
I know. I mean, it's funny because like obviously Moxy has like a really amazing program, and they have such a lively sort of spirit of their brand. And I think that, one of the things we did was we kind of separated the zones in the areas with this amazing sort of carpet story. So our carpets kind of like delineate sort of certain zones of the lobby area.
Yeah, and kind of like we're looking at these two different areas that are both in the lobby.
So it's kind of like this Mondrian kind of effect of carpets, obviously inspired by certain the color stories of the shipping containers. But each kind of area has this grounded effect. Like there's one area that you're kind of looking at here in this rendering off to the right, where we have the library. And so that's kind of like that play zone. So you hang out, read a book. There's like an awesome sort of curated library. And then there's like Jenga and games and fun stuff. And then there's like a kickball machine on the right-hand side. And what's wonderful is you kind of look beyond that, and through these sort of industrial glazing wall and this kind of grand stair that takes you up. And beyond that is like the art house, where we created this like really cool scaffolding effect on the back wall, which all the art can kind of like change throughout seasonally, or different artists and different shows. But it's a really cool, flexible room where it just really, encourages beautiful art, local artists.
And that's a very clever solution as well. Sorry, Anthony, go for it.
No, I was just going to say, when you're designing something that has so many components, and you have to think about flexibility, functionality, design, and the feeling of when you walk in the space. So when you're designing something, even when I'm working on something, it's always fascinating when an idea or a creative thought comes to my brain. When you're designing this hotel, did most of it come to you when you're sitting there with your pen and paper and you're thinking about it, or you're like walking in the park, or you're maybe going to sleep, brushing your teeth, or whatever you're doing, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, when are you most creative?
I mean, I think I'm most creative in the morning. I do a lot of like my own time, like from like 6 o'clock. I get up early, 6 o'clock till like 9 o'clock.
Yep.
Imagery is like a huge thing. Like even traveling, like when we go traveling, we see things where I was so inspired by that. I can't wait to do that in this hotel, or I might relook at that in a different way. So yeah, I think travel, and I'm a morning girl. What about you, Corinne?
Oh, well, I mean, the design process is more in your bag, Cherie. I manage the business, but at the same time, there was a lot of intense research from the location, and that's where you
Mhm.
get a lot of the inspiration from. The artists that we used throughout the entire project, that was really key to the process as well, because they were informing sort of like some color
Right.
direction and everything.
Yeah.
Cherie mentioned the carpet story. So these were all like, native carvings and things that we kind of reinterpreted in the carpet story, and things like that. So the research was super intense. And then, of course, we'd share it with the client. And even doing the accessory story, that was really hilarious. And you're trying to find like the Moxy personality and all that
Yeah.
stuff. So we were throwing out all
All
these
right.
crazy ideas.
I have one more question, and
Yeah.
this is again, we're always trying to teach younger generation. And I've been in many design meetings where the designer takes it personally. They present their board, and either I don't like it or the owner doesn't like it. And as I get older in my career, the people that I work with, they don't take anything personally.
No.
So
I
how do you
know.
how do you teach?
I always tell them. I always
Yes.
tell the young generation, I'm like, this is about the project, this is about the job and like the location, and it's not about you. Like let it go. Let's just move on. And
But was that hard for you? Was that hard for you when you were younger in your career?
I think so, like probably in my 20s, but then I
Yeah.
got out of that really quick because I was in like, hardcore boot camp. I was in a very, very high profile design firm at the time. So yeah, you just move on. You just
You
get
have to
tough.
learn to adapt and move on, or else,
Yeah.
No, no, I think that's very critical for people because you have to have talent to be successful in anything you do. But if you don't know the nuance, and that's a big one, because if you walk into a room and you're being defensive, because I know if I was a designer, I mean, it would take me probably a couple of years to get over that because
Yeah.
it's like if you're making like if you're a chef and you're making somebody
Yeah.
a meal and they don't like it, I mean, it's hard not to take that personally.
even more so now, like we were talking about the pandemic and stuff like that. Sorry, Glenn's probably going to harness me back in, but
Nope.
these young designers now, like a lot of them, they went to school and graduated in their bedrooms, and then they were kind of thrown into this weird
Right.
hybrid model of a world where
Yeah.
you're still on your own, but you're like
Crazy.
dealing with other people. And of course, in this society, as we all know now, we curate whatever we're exposed to, your news, whatever you're interested in.
Yeah.
So it really was like the last few years have been this weird anthropology exercise of like watching how people are adapting to each
Right.
other. People lost their filters too when they were sort of like all
Mhm.
kind of separated, and so we're all kind of learning to communicate again and learning to just step outside of our own because we've just been worrying about ourselves for 3 years indoors. And so how do you like collaborate? And so that's why we're called a collective, because we really pride ourselves on our collaboration, removing egos. We've been there, done that, you know what I mean? And just like wanting to create these amazing
Yeah.
projects with our clients. So it was like everybody had to retrain. I don't know if we're all like solid yet, but we're still working on it. It's like it's a working model.
Well, I'll tell you what, that sounds exhausting to me. And when I'm tired, I want to go back to my room at the Moxy. So let's get back to talking about the design
Yes.
real quick with my little transition there. All right. So this is the bedroom. What were you thinking about the bedroom? And did the building itself give you any limitations here with these rooms, or was that more of a build out for the room area?
It was new, like it was a new construction. So
So it combined. So you had a building that had an older portion and then a newer portion on top of that. Yes. All right.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Cool.
Sorry, couldn't hear that. I mean, with Moxy too, like they are, compact rooms, right? I mean, I think there's around 6 room types in this particular hotel. And I think they're all really fun too, because you obviously have your queen room, which is the largest room. But the whole idea about this is, the rooms, there's this awesome kind of peg wall, like everything is accessible and really flexible. So the whole entire wall across from the bed is, your chair is hung up on the wall, your TV is hung up on the wall, like everything is hung on this peg wall. So it's kind of really cool and sort of interesting. This is a local artist we also used to do these wonderful sort of knotted hanging tapestries above the bed. You can see everything kind of has its place. Like everything was very thought through where the magazine goes, the old school vintage telephone, which is kind of iconic for the property. The wonderful sort of headboard. It's a bit retro too. Like
Right.
the colors are really beautiful, but it's a bit retro at the same time. We developed these custom sinks as well in the washrooms, which are really cool. They were actually done locally by a local concrete artist.
Oh,
which
cool.
is kind of fun.
All right. So, sorry to talk a little bit of what the audience doesn't know, but Anthony, I totally understand you. Those pillows look crisp and amazing.
Yeah, Glenn has heard me way too many times and way too many hours talk about people design a hotel, they buy a hotel, they spend millions and millions and millions of dollars. Very, very, very smart people get involved in the hotel. They build this beautiful design, and then the photograph sucks. and so I've obsessed over pillows and bed making in any hotel that I've been
or
involved
any
in.
hotel I happen to be sitting in trying to do a broadcast from, which is also what I was getting at. But he's absolutely right, because I'll go and then I'll noodle with it and it just looks so much better and it pops, and I think it makes everything connect better.
Glenn, I don't want to tell you how much OCD I have, but you don't see my bed. I'm in the hotel room.
Right.
And typically I'll see your bed when you're in the hotel room, and you don't even see my bed, and I had to make it before I started the podcast. I literally, if I'm sitting in the same room as the bed,
Right.
I had to make my bed.
That's hysterical.
So yeah, so it's so important, and so do you get involved in the photography of the hotel?
Yes, absolutely. We get involved in the art direction, and we're usually on site for the photography. But then this is another sort of hangover from the pandemic, where the photography had to be done really quick. And flights and everything are so cost prohibitive these days, and so the timing didn't just work out. So we didn't work out. So we had somebody on site, Marquez, the group, Kathy was there to help with the photography as well, and to help art directed. But we marked up everything again. It was just communication on steroids, that coordination where we were showing angles and.
I'm just going to bring this picture back in real quick, because you could tell that you curated that photo extensively with the way the laptop is placed on the couch, and there's a small little round table with a beer, it looks like, and some chips or something. Yeah.
That's the Moxy styling there for sure too. So the brand also has it, was involved in the photography too. So it's combining the both. So designers like to keep everything clean and pristine, and then the brand likes to infuse the personality. So it was a combination of both.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what excites you most about having opportunities in the hotel business as opposed to where you ate a lot of meals focused on the condo business during COVID?
I mean, they're both equally fascinating, and I'll transition to Cherie to talk about the design aspect of it. But for us, especially when we started the studio, it was really important to connect locally, because we had been part of an international studio, and that was most of our exposure. So that's something that we were really looking forward to. We did about a dozen condo projects in the area here. It's very different how it works, and so you're excited because it's supposed to be faster, and so you see your project built faster too, which is something that's really great. Sometimes hotels can go on for decades, as we all know.
Yeah, I know. There's one opening in Las Vegas that's been at it for 18 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, Cherie worked on the a project in Shenzhen that took 11 years. I think
11 years.
11 years. They redesigned the ADD about 5 times or something like that, because these trends change.
I mean, the thing is that you design it, and then 11 years later, nothing is in stock. The fabrics, you can't get any of that stuff anymore. So you have to almost respec the entire project, and it usually isn't on trend at that point. So
let's just focus. Let me ask this gets me wanting to ask a couple of questions on now. You're starting a project today. Yeah. How do you anticipate the fact that you may not actually be purchasing anything for that project for a while? How are you trying to ameliorate that problem? And how do you think about maybe some of the technology that may or may not go into the design components?
Well, I think, from a design phasing aspect, we do a lot of the architectural nods, as well as you'll see in the renderings, you'll see our vision for the furniture, that we call it FF&E. But we do allow that to be pushed to the very, very end, as far to the end as we possibly can, so that we don't run into those problems where we cannot get the fabrics anymore, or that chair doesn't look great anymore, or we can't ship that stone, or all of those types of strange interior design things that happen to us all the time. And sometimes we actually even have to respecify 50% of the work. So it does happen, depending on the the lull or how fast the project goes.
And especially these days, and it's certainly happened in the last few years because so many things have changed when you started designing your project pre-pandemic and after, right? So that's all part of the process now. I think everything's been flipped upside down, like most things in the world, but in the design world too, even traditional phasing is not as cut and dry as it used to be.
Right.
When you go from one phase to another, and so you're doing things in such a collaborative way that everything's happening at once. It could be a bit chaotic, but at the same time, everybody's involved, so you're really intimately involved throughout the whole entire project. So sometimes there are some efficiencies there.
But I think good design is timeless, right? Like if we do an amazing design, it's timeless. So when it's 10 years old or something, maybe it's just a matter of redoing it 20% as opposed to 100%.
So in order for Glenn to take us back on course, I have to take us off course. So I have a question. You're welcome. So that way you can get, and congratulations, you're using big words again.
I know, Dr. Producer Suzanne was just saying it. But just so it's too much information, Anthony's been accusing me of not using as many fancy pants words anymore. So I'm trying to get that back.
Because I don't understand the word, so he's dumbed down.
No.
So I was insulted by that. I said, use only a fancy word.
I'm just having mental decline in my 50s. Let's just keep it.
But and a lot of people don't want to talk about this subject, but and you don't have to talk about it, but I'll ask the question. AI, how are you incorporating AI into your business, if at all?
I don't think it's a formal part of our process at all yet. But there's a lot of stuff out there that is fascinating and terrifying at the same time. There's some technology now that you can just, put in some keywords and it can produce a rendering in such a short period of time that you kind of wonder, okay, how do I stay ahead of this thing?
Yeah, right.
But I think right now AI helps us, if you want to write a design brief, you can click a few keywords in there and things like that. But we haven't incorporated it at all in the design process. It certainly wouldn't happen with Cherie and I because we are technologically completely challenged. So I don't think it would help our process. But it is creeping into our world. So we all have to figure out how we're going to live with that because I don't think it's something that's going away fast.
Right. And I don't think it's ever going to take away the nuance of what you guys do because design is the most nuanced career field in the history of career fields. Yes. And that one little picture that you decided that's going to be 6 inches instead of 5 inches changed the entire room. And so that nuance and that creativity and that human connection. However, just to facilitate, even from an administrative standpoint, I use some AI techniques in order to help myself save time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We've started testing it out a little here and there. I think creatively, I don't think it's something that we would infuse in our systems because this is what we do. And when you tell a story of a hotel, you do a design, you're always telling a story. There's always a journey. There's always a sense of discovery. There's always little surprises. Those little nuances and those little surprises, I don't think are necessarily something that an AI could pick up. It's more of a human thing. I hope so anyway, or else we're all in trouble.
At least for now.
Yes, exactly. But it's because design is how it makes you feel. Like when you're
emotional. It's all about emotion, right?
And I mean that's the key part. I don't think AI can replicate that just yet.
Yeah, I was in an office the other day. I walked in and it's brand new. It was a medical office and it was a brand new facility, beautiful on the outside. It was nice, but the lighting was terrible. And it just made me feel depressed within 30 seconds. It was beautiful design. It was open air. It was everything. But it was there was no lighting. All the lighting was almost very dark in the corner, very light here, very dark on the floor, very light. And it just really changed my mood.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there's so many co-disciplines that some people don't realize how integral they are to a successful design, art, lighting, things like that. And lighting is so necessary. It's so important. We work so intimately with lighting designers. Cherie, I'll let you speak more to that, but in sort of the coordination with them and having them see our design, understand it, interpret it.
Cherie, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you work with those designers. And also please add the flexibility of what you could do with lighting is demonstrably changed over the last decade, almost creating a whole new industry. So how are you thinking about that to highlight and create spaces?
Well, even to like Corinne's point earlier and how we do this sort of flexible spaces, in a lot of hotels, sometimes it'll be like a breakfast room in the morning, and then sometimes it will be like a lounge at night. Lighting has like a huge part of that sort of, that ambiance changing from day to night. Even when we're designing something, like if you have some amazing entry point, or we want some sort of grand, aha moment, the lighting is making that like 100% better. If we're lighting from the floor or we're lighting from the ceiling coves. And also, lighting, you don't want to see where the lighting's coming from. That's kind of like the key thing for us. Right. I don't want to see big, stupid things coming out of the ceiling. I want to feel the ambiance, but not see where the light source is coming from. So I think a really successful project always has these wonderful sort of lighting moments that just kind of change gradually throughout the day, and you don't know really where it's coming from. And it's just glorious, right? I think lighting's huge.
I like what you're saying about changing throughout the day. It serves different purposes. Number one, it really helps with circadian rhythms and stuff like that. Keeps people on target for what time their day is. I know that the Institute of Architecture or something like that, whatever association that is, they do that in their offices. Also, what I like about it is by creating different moods, and the ultimate goal is to get people to want to stay in those spaces. So in the morning, you want to create an atmosphere to sell more coffee and croissant, where in the evening, you probably want to sell more cocktails. And in order to do that, you have to create the right mood, not necessarily so people know what is going on, but so they get those subconscious cues that they just want to stay and spend a little bit longer.
And lighting would actually make you want to leave a space, right? If it's too bright or whatever, it just becomes cacophonous. It's like you're just being attacked with all your senses. And at night, if it's a place where it's a lounge or a meeting space where you're social, everybody wants to look good, and that was like, very famous quotes from all these designers and stuff like that about looking like a model and like keeping the lights down low, and everybody's just looking so fabulous. They're having a great time staying there. And we're doing a lot more sustainability design now too. So we're working a lot with Six Senses and doing resorts, and lighting is so critical to outdoors, because of all of the elements and, wildlife and how it affects, the local fauna and all these things. It is so considered. It's tremendously important, and it's actually like detrimental to the health of some, beings. So it's a huge science and an art in itself.
Yeah. And talk about considerate. Your country's got the coolest thing ever. Up in the Banff area, you've got wildlife bridges. So instead of cars going over them, they have bridges that go over the highways so the wildlife could do it. And there's trees and grass on them and everything.
Yes.
So I think that's pretty amazing. All right, Cherie, before we wrap up today, tell us a little bit about how you think about your approach to design. How do you get your mindset in order to do that? I'd love to, give some people a clue onto the creative process a little bit more.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, obviously it's about the place. So we obviously have a location. So the location is key. We do we dive into like where the location is, the history, the artisans, the architecture, any kind of like historical notion to that place is a huge part of our thread that kind of runs through the project. And then, of course, there's the brand, which we consider highly. What kind of a brand is it? Is it a Moxy? Is it a St. Regis? Is it a, Four Seasons? So that obviously has a huge layer and effect on how we plan things, how we style things, how we specify things, how we think about the spaces. And then obviously the client as well, like we have the developer. And, we don't really think about budgets, I always say, too much. We love to design things and then sort of like work that through the process. But yeah, we create narratives, sometimes we create a narrative about the people, like who are these people that want to go to this hotel or to this space, like, and then we sometimes create narratives just about the place and about the history and about the people and about the artisans. So we kind of have different sort of approaches. And then through that narrative, we tell a story, we tell a story about this wonderful place that you can go visit and experience. So that's kind of how we approach it. Awesome. And then it all kind of just comes together through imagery, through planning, through materials, through inspiration of the place, the people. It's
The
great.
narrative is key these days, and I think all brands are really big on that. They want you to tell a story about this place. So whether you associate it to a personality, people, or whether it's an object or something that really inspires, like the root soul of the property, and then we really develop that. And all brands are really focused on the narrative. They always make sure that it's really thought through.
But it's also important for us too, because the narrative is almost like it's like our Bible, right? So when we think about the design and maybe someone's going a little off, one of the team members might be thinking, oh, I'm going to do this. It's like, no, let's pull it back. Let's come back to the narrative. It's kind of like our sort of grounded thing that we always kind of reference back to.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. This has been absolutely incredible. I appreciate you being here with us today. And of course, we've been talking to the good folks at MAED Collective out of Toronto, but working globally these days. Ladies, really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Have a terrific day.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, that was fun. I really love doing these design shows because it's something that I don't know enough about, and I always feel like I learned so much when we do one of these.
Yeah, it's interesting because you and I can walk into a room and I feel and sense everything.
Yeah.
You walk into a room and you're like, I'm going over there.
You mean to the bar?
Yeah. No, but it's just interesting how people fill a room. And when you get there, whatever you're doing, like, is important to you, and then the design may come into place, whereas design starts to hit me as soon as I walk in the door.
Yeah, I'm all about that transition zone, right? You got to come in, you got to give people a few feet to think and breathe and make that transition into your space. That's when I can start to focus on it,
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. And hey, I want you guys to focus on something. Why not follow us? Download our podcast wherever you get audio shows. We are there. And of course, if you're listening to us right now, thank you. We really appreciate that. But why not give us a little bit of a look, especially with a show like this where we had so many great graphics. Find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and of course, all shows are housed in perpetuity at novacancynews.com. I'm Glenn Hausman. That's Anthony Melchiori. Remember, you've got one life, so blaze on and
Be kind to yourself.
see you guys tomorrow.